Good afternoon, everyone. As Ty said, I'm Matt Seifert. I'm a fourth generation farmer, once removed. So what that means is my dad did not farm, but my grandpa and my great grandpa did. I'm getting the farm restarted, I guess, if you want to say. I am located in southern Indiana, here in Posey County, which, if you look at a map of Indiana, it's the very southwestern tip of the state. We call it the boot tip. We are in section zone 6B. So we do get some harsh winters, but they come a little bit later, and we tend to warm up in the spring pretty early. As you said, I raise corn, soybeans, sweet corn, sunflowers, and we just started a cut flower business this year. I started no-tilling in 2016 in with my sweet corn patch, and noticed that I no-tilling just wasn't quite getting me where I needed to be. So in 2021, I added cover crops to the mix. Last fall was my first year seeding with drones, and it went very well. I shot a YouTube video, had a lot of feedback on it. So if you haven't already, follow me on Facebook and YouTube because we'll have a ton more content come out this year on cover cropping and drones and just our whole sustainable practice. So this slide here just kind of shows how my cover crop journey began. I take an annual picture with my kids during planting season. So 2022, no kids, also no cover crop. That was the first year I farmed that field right next to my house. 2023, my daughter was born, and we had just a little bit of cover crop, so it was very minimal. It was a cereal rye cover crop that had been terminated long before planting. 2024 was quite a bit bigger cover crop. That was again a cereal rye cover crop, and it was killed about 4 weeks prior to planting. And then 2025 spring planting, that's what was flown on with the drone. So that cover crop was mainly a clover mix in that field behind me, and we were planting green into the standing clover cover crop there. So I use S&K Aerial Solutions. They're based out of Albion, Illinois. So they're a little bit of a haul for me, but they're probably one of the better commercial guys in the area. You can see that this pictures here, this is when they were flying it on. So to kind of build off of the conversation before, one of the big limiting things on these drones is the pounds that they can carry and the flight that they have. So for us, it took a little bit of adjustment and figuring out, but we figured out that it was best to put about 50 pounds of seed in the drone each flight. By the time we were running out of seed, the drone was about out of battery. So the way we worked here was uh, on that top of the truck was the drone operator. He would land the drone, pull out the battery, switch the battery, and that took less than 60 seconds. He would then land it in front of me, and we were using bags. So I would just dump a 50-pound bag of seed into it, and he would take off. So less than 2 minutes, we had a battery change and a hopper fill up, and we were taking back off. So I want to talk a lot today on the type of seed that I found works the best. So we flew two different types, two different mixes into the standing crop that we had. Because these two mixes were so different, as you can see, one of them was 23 pounds to the acre and the other one was 9. They actually used two different drones. So calibrating these drones, you can do it in the field, but not that big of a swing. You have to change the spreader and the motor speed. So he brought two different drones. So the one that was flown into standing soybeans up there at the top, we dubbed that the kernel counter mix, and that was a pretty good mix. We had probably much better results out of that than we did the one below called the high fly. We found this year at least that small seeds work the best. We have tried broadcasting peas in the past and have had absolutely no luck with germination. As the same, our oats that we broadcast didn't get as good a germination as you would expect as you would have if you drilled it. So just kind of reasons of why we picked these specific mixes. I'll start with the kernel counter mix. Obviously, going into corn the next year, my main goal was to fix nitrogen. I want to reduce the nitrogen cost as much as possible, at least synthetic nitrogen. We, for whatever reason, I've always liked radishes. I'd always put a radish into my cover crop mixes. This year on this particular field, it just worked out that there was a compaction layer at about 4 inches down, where the previous tenant had disked at 4 inches every year. So we threw that radish in there. It was able to get through and bust the compaction layer, and then pull some of that nutrients up into the root zone for the next year crop. The oats we put in there for just the biomass above ground and below ground. And then also, oats are very good at nutrient scavenging and holding that for the next year's crop. And the clovers, which is the big conversation piece of that one, we use for nitrogen fixing. The high fly, which we flew into a standing cornfield, preparing for soybeans the next year, again, was the main goal was to eliminate that 4 inch compaction layer. So we threw in obviously the radish to give that real big strong tap root. We also put in an annual ryegrass because annual ryegrass has arguably the largest below ground biomass of any grasses. It's very aggressive in getting down and creating little micro fractions within your compaction layer and breaking that up. And the ryegrass also scavenges nutrients. We also threw in some rapeseed, mainly because I like looking at it, but it also does a lot of nitrogen scavenging. And then the crimson clover, like I said, we do the flowers and our sweet corn, so pollinators are very important to us. So we try to give flowers in the early spring. That way, the bees are um, coming to our fields instead of just bypassing them. So yeah, all in all, we were very careful and we worked with a couple different seed companies and our drone operator on what seed rates and mixes were going to work best, being flown in with the drones. And we did have to increase the rates on a couple of them because these are NRCS certified mixes. They have to be increased a little bit because we're applying airway. So some of these worked really well. Like I said, this is the first year I did it with a drone, so we're still learning. Some work really well, and others not so much. So we will start with the not so much side of applying cover crops with a drone. This picture was taken April 23rd of this spring. We were planting soybeans, splitting the corn rows on 30-inch rows. As you can see, there's really not much cover left out there. This has not been sprayed at that point in time in planting. You can see just a little bit of the annual ryegrass and just a little bit of clover established. Lots of chickweed. That's always, I guess that's the free cover crop that everybody gets. But in all reality, we did not get much growth out of it. So I'm pretty well figuring that the reason that was our corn harvest was late last year. We didn't get that corn off until November 3rd. So before we got our first frost, there just wasn't enough time for sunlight to get down to the ground and get some germination and get some growth. With that, this is the same field. So this is where our sweet corn patch was last year. Again, same field, same mix, same drone, same application rate, but we have a very large stand. You can see the annual ryegrass is huge. You can see the yellow rapeseed out there and the crimson clover. It got massive and it planted really well, so that's a plus, but we did end up having a little bit of an issue that came from that, which you'll see in these next couple slides. So you can see a pretty definitive area after we came in and we sprayed this, that where the sweet corn area was, obviously there's still a lot of ground cover from that annual ryegrass compared to where the field corn was. There's not much there. So we were very happy at the beginning of May of how the cover crops turned out. We were very happy with the 30-inch rows and very optimistic. We were quite quickly taught the old cover crop saying of if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And our annual ryegrass came back. So just a couple weeks later, the annual ryegrass came back with a vengeance. Hit apparently the first spray did not get a good kill, and below the dotted line there, that's our sweet corn patch. That's where it came back the strongest, obviously because it had the most growth to begin with. But we also did have patches out in the field corn area that came back. My assumption there is that it didn't germinate in the fall and it just laid dormant. And then once we opened up that canopy, got some sunlight, some moisture down there, it decided to go ahead and germinate. So that drone application, I think we would have had a lot better results had I gotten the corn off earlier. We had a test plot out there, so we were kind of hands tied on when we could work with our local retailer to get that harvested. But the sweet corn area proved to me that that mix is effective, and it is effective to be applied by a drone. Moving on to what worked well, this was the clover mix, the kernel counter mix that we flew into standing soybeans, again, 30-inch row soybeans. So this is crimson clover and balança clover that did not winter kill. And we had a pretty hard winter down here in southern Indiana, as hard of our winters as we get. And didn't winter kill, or at least it came back in the spring. So this is pretty unusual for us to have, at least for me, to have this amount of spring regrowth. You can see on the left here, it was all the way up to my knee in height. You can see on the side by side there, it was almost over the tires. The bees were just loving this. They were all over it. We had several photographers want to come out and take pictures because the field was just full of the flowers and the pollinators, and we were very happy with clover. So clover got moved up pretty high on my list of seeds that work well being spread with drones. We did again plant this field green this spring. The clover was sprayed the day before we planted, so you can see it was still technically green when we planted. This was planted on May 15th. This is our white corn field. We then came in with a underfirth rolling basket and rolled this clover down about 2 days after we had planted it. If you're interested, there is a video on our YouTube channel of no-tilling the corn crop into this and how I have the planter set up to work into this thick of a cover crop. It did take quite a bit of adjusting, but ultimately we ended up with a pretty good stand with given what we had to work with. So one of the interesting things that we learned this year was the maturity rate of your soybeans matters, especially when you're applying your cover crop with a drone mid-season. So down here in southern Indiana, mid threes to early fours are pretty well the norm. So this was a cover crop, or this was a test plot that we had with our local retailer. So we had all the way up from a 2.9 to a 4.1. Now, what you can see is that the 2.9s to the 3.3s, because they dropped their leaves earlier, got sunlight through the canopy down to the ground a lot earlier, that's where the clover got the biggest. And it was very big. The 3.5s to 3.8s, which are pretty normal, again, had a great clover stand. It just wasn't as thick. And then the 4s and our 4.1s, there is some clover out there, but it was a lot more of the grasses that came through. The top yielder of that plot was the Pioneer Z series beans of the 3/8 and the 4.0s. They came in at 83 bushel to an acre. Now with the early maturities, our top yielder was the Dynagrow 3.3s at 76 bushel per acre. So ultimately, as a row crop farmer, I'm not chasing yields. I'm chasing the return on my investment. So if I have to sacrifice yields a little bit to get a better return, I'm totally willing to do that. And this experiment really kind of showed me some different opportunities. So looking at just the two different maturity levels, going from 83.2 bushel to 76.3 bushel, you're looking at about a 7 bushel an acre loss to get that extra clover growth. So 7 bushel an acre, we're about $10.50 bushel beans last year at harvest. You're looking at about $73 loss on your soybean revenue. But if I can quantify that and reduce my nitrogen application on my corn, well, that might just be worth it. So in-season price for 32% nitrogen here in Southern Indiana was roughly 72 cents a unit. If you would have prepaid, it was all the way down to 47 cents a unit. So we did send the clover cover crop off to the lab to get a true analysis done on what we had. And as you can see, we had fixed 127 pounds of nitrogen, which is pretty well spot on to what I side dress. We side dress 120 units. At least that's the goal most years. So it was very easy for me to do some simple math and figure out can we quantify that? Does that cash flow for us? So given the loss of revenue on a soybean that's less than 3 maturity of roughly $73 an acre, in this instance, it cash flows. Our in-season nitrogen cost would have been 103 units per acre, but we produced 109 units per acre worth of nitrogen fixing. So yes, we gave up $73 in the fall, but we gained essentially $105 to $110 on our corn crop the next year. So in this instance, if you had not prepaid your nitrogen, it cash flowed. But if you did prepay your nitrogen, it does not cash flow. So that $73 loss per acre on your soybeans would not pencil out on your corn. So that big reduction in nitrogen cost down to 47 cents a unit, you end up losing more money with the 2 years combined than what you're getting back. Now, that's not to say that there's not other benefits of having the cover crop flown on with the drone and getting that big regrowth and that growth in the fall. There definitely is. But as far as being able to quantify that and be able to cash flow it's hard. Now, one thing we did see that again we can't quantify was here in Southern Indiana, we had an incredibly wet spring. So a lot of the nitrogen that I came in and side dressed actually leached away. And I can see that in my corn fields. What I can also see is that in that 2.9 to 3.3 maturity soybean range where the clover was just massive and had fixed 127 pounds of nitrogen, it's releasing the nitrogen. I can see that that corn is a lot darker green. It's a little bit taller. It doesn't seem to be struggling near as much when the ground was wet and the 32% that I had put on had unfortunately leached away a lot. That clover started to break down and started to decompose and really release some of that nitrogen back into the ground for my corn crop. So while you can't always quantify and say, yes, this cash flows or no, this does not cash flow, there are other benefits to having them flown on with the drone and getting that spring regrowth. So yeah, ultimately that's pretty well my experience with drones. It's limited at best. We will continue to use drones on our farm. The biggest thing for me is it's a massive time saver. I've got two young kids that I try to spend as much time with as I can, and we were able to fly the whole farm in one afternoon with the drones, as opposed to when I've used the planter in the past, you have to set the planter, plant it, clean up the planter. You're talking about a couple days worth of work. Um, we have adjusted our mixes a little bit for the next season. We're making some adjustments there. If you've got questions about what that is, what we're going to apply here in August, definitely shoot me an email. I'll drop my contact down below. Applying with drones is not for everyone. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is, because you don't get the best seed to soil contact. We were dry last fall, so after we applied or spread the seed, we went probably 2 weeks without getting a rain. So we did have some germination issues. You have to keep that in mind. If we would have drilled it, we definitely would have had better growth. But I mean, at the same time, not every cover crop works for everybody. So you just have to look at it and see, does drones fit in your operation? It may not fit in the entire operation, but it may fill a void that you have. So if you haven't already, go ahead and find me on Facebook or YouTube, and you can shoot me a message there, or shoot me an email. I'll put my phone number on there. You can also text me or call me if you have any other questions. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Matt. Yeah, no. So we do have some questions here for you. How was the spread pattern of the annual ryegrass? The least dense of what was you seeded?
Yeah, so the annual ryegrass was, again, it was flown into standing corn, so that was pretty easy to go out and find because you got clean between the rows.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how big of passes he was making as far as what his swath was. I know that they had calibrated their drones before even coming to the field, so
Mhm.
they knew, okay, this, I gave them the mix and they calibrated it to, we're going to make this spread, and it worked well. I will say there were no gaps in it.
All right, good. Uh, Dr. White is wondering, did the roller crimp clover that you planted green interfere with the corn emergence?
So no, that's kind of a a two-sided question. Like I said, we were very wet, so we had issues with emergence because of moisture. I'm not going to say that was attributed to the cover crop there at all.
Mhm.
I have row cleaners on the planter, so the clover moved out of the way very easily. I run spike closing wheels on the planter, so I got the seed trench closed. We got very good emergence from planting into at least the green cover crop. On another field, we planted green into some 6 foot tall cereal rye that we planted soybeans into. That was a whole nother story.
All right. Yeah. Do you think you get a good enough seeding pattern through the corn canopy?
So the corn, I'm still trying to figure that one out. So like my picture showed, uh, what we spread into the corn had moderate results at best. I don't know that that's because the corn's canopy was so thick that the seed wasn't getting to the ground, or because we were so dry after spreading the seed that it didn't germinate, or that I got it off. Like there's too many variables at play to be able to say this was particular the issue. I'm gonna try it again this year, right or wrong or indifferent. We're gonna try it again and see what happens. And um, but I can't, I can say that there was seed on the ground after flying the drone through there. I was able to walk through between the corn rows and pick out the clovers and the ryegrass and see the actual seed.
Mhm. That's always a good thing when you see the seed on the ground that made it there. After that,
Absolutely.
it's up to Mother Nature.
That's
Um,
right.
and so it was interesting on seeing the that soybean maturity and the clover, how that kind of played out. Do you and Margot's wondering, do you plan to adjust your seeding rates depending on soybean maturity when you're seeding into it?
So I'm not planning on adjusting my cover crop seeding rate because of the soybean maturity. I am adjusting my mix because of the soybean maturity. Um, we're putting out a lot more seeds per acre this fall. At least that's my intention.
Mhm.
Again, I have another soybean test plot, so we'll probably see similar results again. This year's an even bigger soybean test plot. So if I do continue to see same results of my lower maturity soybeans getting that bigger regrowth, yeah, I might adjust my seeding rates accordingly. But at this point, I want to get a couple years worth of data and experience in there before I start making changes.
Yeah, that's interesting to kind of see how that just all something so you don't think about it and everything with it.
Yeah, I definitely
Um,
did not anticipate seeing a physically being able to see a change or a difference in the maturity rates from the previous soybean crop affecting the clover regrowth in the spring, but it showed up plain as day.
yeah, it's crazy how that works and everything. I guess, and one thing is I like to always ask, what's the what was the for people who are just we kind of talked about this in the last, they're thinking about um getting started in using a drone to seed their crops. What's the what words of wisdom can you give them to them on what they're before going into it? Like kind of was the biggest mistake that you made that you wish you would have known or on that?
So this is probably going to sound really counterintuitive to a lot of people. Um, Listen to your NRCS office, but don't listen to your NRCS office. The recommendations that they're giving are not for drones. So the recommendations that my local NRCS office says the rate that I was applying, I needed to apply basically 3 times that. Well, no, I don't. I'm spreading it in August into standing crops, which is in our area very odd.
Hmm.
Talk to people that have actually done it. Talk to the drone operators. Talk to a seed company that has experience mixing cover crops and spreading multiple cover crop mixes. Obviously, Albert Lee Seed is a great option to reach out to figure out a mix that works best and what seeds you'll have a good result germinating in, because you're really relying spreading into the soybeans, you're relying on that soybean leaf to drop and create that seed to soil contact. So you have to have something that's not super picky when it comes to
Hmm.
germinating.
Yeah, yeah. Because then, how would you? I don't know if you've had the experience, like, because I know there's NRCS. They do a lot of cover crop programs. They want you to plant so much at this. And how have you any interactions with them on saying that this is the prescribed rate that we would like? Yeah, like, well, no, I'm seeing it as drone. This is what we recommend. How is that if we had that interaction gone about?
Yeah, so I did have that last year. The two mixes that I had originally that I had worked with a company on developing the mixes, I took them to the NRCS office and they said that's not enough. Even though you are planting it in August or applying it in August, they still said it was not enough seed. So we did have to go back and increase the rates. They wanted me to increase it more than what I did. I basically went on the bare minimum NRCS requirement, but it was above the top end of what my seed guy was recommending. So you gotta the NRCS is a great resource. There's cost share programs that they have, and they do have a lot of information. You just ultimately have to know your farm and know what works, what doesn't work, and like I said, talk to people that have actually done it. Unfortunately, most people at the NRCS office have not had cover crops flown on with drones on their own field. They
Hmm.
don't they don't know how that works.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of can see what you're saying. It's one of those things where it's if it's relatively new, not many who experience it. It kind of takes a while and everything. It just seems be like everyone needs it. It's kind of hard to say. Everyone get together and kind of figure it out, but being it relatively new, there's not much back. research or collaboration done, unfortunately. So it just hopefully in a matter of time that becomes less and less an issue. And as drone seeding becomes more popular and more research, then maybe there might be a two different rates. Oh, like we have with drilling and broadcasting. Oh, you have drilling, broadcasting, and drone seeding. So that might be maybe that might come about and everything on that. Yeah. But I don't see any more questions coming in here. I did see that you did drop your contact information in there, Matt. Thank you very much. And like you said in his presentation, if you don't have any questions or now, or you come up with think of something at the end, just shoot him a email or call, text. He sounds like he'd be more than happy to help you out on that. So thank you, Matt.
Absolutely. Thank you.